Hi everyone. Tonight's episode is about Hadith and Sunnah controversy. Many campaigns, many tricks, and many even tries uh, and many plots never stopped aiming to distort Islam by destroying the Quran. Of course, over the centuries, and still, for that matter. Now, first, it started by introducing Islam Muawiyah, what we call Islam Muawiyah, which means the diversion of Islam um, Muawiyah style. That was 30 years after Muhammad died, well, more or less. Continued efforts precipitated with Abbasids. After Umayyad era, the Abbasid came and the effort of doing so continued. Actually, they needed, like Umayyad, they needed to legalize and legitimize their rule as inheritance of the messenger. So they paid and or obliged scholars and storytellers to fabricate hadith and pretend that the Prophet said so. Now, behind the curtains of all this, Persian plot and what we call Israeliyat. Examples are many, of course. We always read and hear about it. Now, Quran was revealed 13 years in Mecca. I mean, for over the course of 23 years, 13 years in Mecca and 10 years in Medina. The revealed Quran in Mecca in 13 years consisted about short surahs. They were easy to memorize. While the Quran revealed in Medina during 10 years consisted of long surahs. So it's not the same. There must be something done about it, which is, we will see. So besides memorizing the Quran by Muhammad's companions, Muhammad, ordered it to be written on whatever, on sheets, on papers, on rocks, on anything. One of the copiers betrayed Muhammad and deserted Medina back to Mecca and related stories and invented tales. So this is one example about how things can be altered and fabricated. Now, what about after Muhammad died, like 100 years after Muhammad died? Wouldn't they do even more, distorting and fabricating and etc.? Hadith, I mean, fabricating hadith. Actually, it's worth reflecting upon. I mean, we have to be serious about ourselves and and see that this was really done. Many hadiths were fabricated. Majority of hadith actually appeared in mid third Hijri century. This is again worth thinking or reflecting upon. to realize this corruption we're talking about. Muhammad did not command nor recommend recording hadith. Actually, he advised his companions not to. And the reason is that he wanted believers not to get confused between this and this. It's a wahi, and they will think that hadith is a wahi, which what happened later on, of course. But whatever the Prophet was trying to avoid actually happened. Anyway, very reasonable decision Muhammad took. So hadith and Quran wouldn't be kind of, a confusion for believers. Politicizing faith and religion is the corruption, actually. Now, this is in the era of Umayyad and Abbasid. Politicizing is actually is a big event of corruption. Plus, we don't have to forget the Persian plot and the Israeliyat. This is why for Islam to attain objective, which is reaching to all humanity, offering a choice, is absolutely to separate religion from politics. Besides, the average conceived and approved hadith exceeds, in the best scenario, 15,000 hadith. And each hadith would consist of equivalent to 2-3 verses of the Quran. So you can imagine how large and huge a quantity of hadith. Now, Quran makes only 6,239 verses, partitioned on 600 pages. Bukhari book alone is more than twice as much. So this is, I'm trying to show that this is an exaggeration. This is irrational. This is not accepted. Consequently, what the Prophet tried to prevent happened, as I said, and nowadays Muslims all over the world dived in the confusion of prevailing hadith over the Quran. It's a shame, really a shame. It's ignorance, and it's an insult to the Prophet, and it's an assault on the Prophet and on the Quran. Particularly because those hadiths in majority contradict clearly the Quran. Examples are many. I will only cite few here. In one hadith says, well, they pretend that the Prophet said this, that whoever changes his religion, meaning Islam, kill him. My God. While God said something else in verse 29, Surah 18, and in verse 54, Surah 5, and in other few verses as well. There is no killing whatsoever, or no killing verdict for whoever changes or leave his or her religion. So who are we to decide on behalf of Allah to take the forbidden life of a human being? It's a shame. Then the case of prisoner in another hadith. One hadith suggests horrible torture and killing the prisoners afterward. While Allah clearly ordered in verse 4, Surah 47, completely something worthy of Islam, something godly, merciful, and generous, the Prophet did even more, setting prisoner free after helping 10 companions to read and write. Now this is genius. So how can it be something with this thinking and attitude could ever say to kill a prisoner? Anyway, last but not least, stoning of adulterer and adulteress, abrogated in verse 2, Surah 24, but still practiced in our world of Islam, overriding the Quran, which is another shame. This is how much Hadith and Sunnah are elevated to overtake God's words. Big shame. Inventing a religion to compete or distort and destroy Islam, as if they are inventing a new religion competing with Islam. And distorting Islam and destroying Quran from within, which means Muslims are doing this for their own religion. I mean, it's unbelievable and it's very shameful. Allowing huge criticism hitting the religion of God. Of course, we see that every day. Criticizing us, criticizing Quran, criticizing Islam, but actually it's it's not really justified. Why? Because this criticism is based upon false hadith, upon non-factual issue. God's religion is Islam tolerance. This is it, Islam tolerance. It's time to get rid of these bullshit of hadith. They rather hurt Islam. Think about it. Thank you.